Hello, and today we're going to be talking about some of the new tools Ryobi has announced and what I personally think of them. So let's get started. Okay, starting off with Ryobi's new multi-tool, the Pbl Rt01b. Overall, the new multi-tool is almost identical to the original one. The big differences are the fact that there isn't as much rubberized texture on the new model, and the fact that they've also added a lanyard loop as well as a belt clip on the new model, which I think will be a nice feature. The onboard hex key storage has also been externalized a little bit. It's not as built into the handle as the original version, which I'm not sure how I feel about that, but overall it still looks like it's going to be a fairly decent tool. It really does look almost identical to the original one, and I actually really do like the original one quite a bit. So overall, I think it is going to be an interesting upgrade, although I think if you already own the multi-tool, the new features that they've added probably aren't really going to make it worth upgrading to if you already have one. But overall, I think it's going to be a decent tool. Next up, we have the new circular saw. Overall, it definitely has a little bit different body and a little bit different design. And I don't think I really actually like the new design all that much. I think I actually kind of prefer the older design. The specs on the newer saw are a little bit better, but not so much so that it's worth actually going out and spending the extra money that the new version will probably cost. I really think that your better bet here would actually find the older model, because it'll probably be on discount or markdown, and I think that would be the better route of going, because quite frankly, the new saw just doesn't look all that impressive to me. So, moving on. Next up, we have Ryobi's new Reciprocating Saw. Overall, I actually was looking forward to this Reciprocating Saw simply because, well, the previous Reciprocating Saw from their budget lineup wasn't really all that impressive. It wasn't horrible, but it definitely wasn't anything that would impress anybody. And their brushless Reciprocating Saw from the HP lineup is, well, in my opinion, it's pretty pathetic. And I'll get into that some other time. But overall, I was looking forward to this Reciprocating Saw. Unfortunately, after reading the specs, I'm a little bit disappointed now at this point. Simply because the specs are identical to the previous generation, which was underwhelming in my opinion. So I think this might be a pass simply because of the specs. Although it does look like it has a much better design, at least when it comes to the body of the tool. So maybe I'll be wrong about this. Maybe there will be actual real-world difference in between the two models. But as far as I can tell, at least from the specs right now, without actually owning the tool, it looks almost identical. Next up, we have their new budget drill driver, the Pbl Rt01b. Now, overall, this new budget drill driver seems to be a fairly decent improvement over the previous generation. They've added some features that were missing from the previous generations, and they've also taken away two beloved features that many people will miss, and a lot of people really hate that they've been taking away from their drill drivers. But we'll cover that here in a second. The feature that they've added to this drill driver is the fact that they've added a ratcheting clutch. This will be useful for when you're drilling multiple holes in rapid succession and you don't really want to lose your bit. So overall, the ratcheting clutch is going to be a nice feature on this particular drill driver. They've also changed the way the body looks a little bit, and I actually kind of like the new design. So I think it gets a pass there. Now, where it doesn't get a pass would probably be the fact that they've removed the magnet tray as well as the bit holder at the base of the tool. They nerfed the magnet tray on the previous generation, and so it was kind of useless, and I can see why it's now gone. They were weaning us off of it, I guess. But I just really can't forgive them for removing the bit holder. The bit holder is super useful, especially for when you're dealing with two different kinds of fasteners, and the fact that they're letting some stupid penny pincher or some accountant dictate what features are on their tools rather than listening to their customers is really irritating to me. And if they ever try to claim that they remove these features because of customer feedback, I'm going to call complete BS on that, because most people I've ever talked to who use Ryobi tools absolutely love these features. So, in the long run, it's still going to be a useful tool, even if it is missing those beloved features that many people love and enjoy. Now, they did add the belt clip back on this particular model when they took it away from the previous model. So that is good news that they've returned with the belt clip. And there actually are accessories you can screw into the belt clip ports on whatever side you're not using, and it will function as a magnet tray or a bit holder. So that at least is a little bit of good news. But like I said, I am still super disappointed that they've decided to continue with their stupid strategy of pissing off longtime Ryobi fans. So, moving on. Okay, let's move on to the new impact driver. Now, the new impact driver looks pretty identical to the previous generation, and the performance will probably be pretty similar too. As a matter of fact, the only real difference, at least when it comes to performance, is the fact that the new impact driver will be able to deliver 200 additional impacts per minute. Instead of only being able to deliver 3,200 impacts per minute, it'll be able to deliver 3,400 impacts per minute. which in my opinion really isn't that big of an upgrade, because once you're dealing in the thousands of impacts per minute, it just isn't that noticeable. So in my opinion, I think I would rather actually go with the older generation, which still has the bit holder as well as the magnet tray, versus the new generation, which has lost them. Now I will say the one good thing about the new impact driver is the fact that it brought back the belt clip, which is a good thing, and I can definitely see some people going that route. But for me personally, I'm going to stick with my current old generation one, simply because I love my bit holder and magnet tray. So let's move on to the next tool. And next up we have Ryobi's new rotary tool. Now the Pbl Rt01b fixes a lot of the complaints that I had about the previous generation of this tool, but at the same time I don't think they fixed all my complaints, and the fact that they're asking $100 definitely means this isn't a tool that I'm all that interested in working with. Just because I don't use rotary tools that often, and I just am not willing to pay $100 for a rotary tool. So quite frankly, this isn't a tool that I'm going to review, but I think some people, or people who use rotary tools all the time, might have an interest in this one. But like I was saying, for me, I have no interest in it. And next up we have another rotary tool, the Pbl Rt01b. This one's going to be part of the HP series and is going to incorporate a brushless motor, and Ryobi is claiming that it's going to be able to deliver 2 times more power under load. I'm not really 100% sure what they're comparing it against, but whatever. I do think this tool will probably be fairly popular among people who use rotary tools professionally or fairly often. For me personally, I'm fairly happy with my inverter and Dremel setup that I use, and so it's not going to be something I'm going to be purchasing. I do think it will be popular among those certain circles, however, as long as they have Ryobi batteries. Okay, next up we have a hammer drill. Now this hammer drill looks identical to the hammer drill that I already discussed, but it does have a different model number, and its model number is the Pbl Rt02b. Now it doesn't have as much torque as the current hammer drill that Ryobi is offering in the budget lineup, but then again, I'm not sure what Ryobi has been thinking lately, so this could be a replacement and they're just not trying to hide the fact that it's not going to be as powerful. But who knows? The current hammer drill does have a handle as well, and it still has a lot of the features that I like, so I don't really see any real appeal to this current replacement hammer drill, maybe other than the fact that it probably will have a ratcheting chuck. But other than that, it really doesn't seem to be any sort of improvement on the current hammer drill Ryobi is offering, so I don't really find it all that appealing. So moving on. And next up we have another cordless rotary tool. This one's going to be a 12-volt cordless rotary tool that's charged via a USB-C cable, and that probably means that the batteries are not removable, as near as I can tell from the pictures and online manual that they're not removable, which is definitely an interesting decision considering the price tag comes in at right around $100. I think most people, once you get up to that $100 price tag, are going to be looking for a rotary tool that has a removable battery so they can swap the batteries out once a battery gets low or if a battery dies completely. So for me personally, this tool doesn't really hold that much of an interest, but maybe some people will like it. I just don't think it's going to be a very popular tool simply because of that built-in battery. So moving on. And next up we have a tool from Ryobi's new USB Lithium Power series, and this would be the Carver. Now this Carver is going to be retailing at $69 US, and it should be an interesting tool to say the least for certain individuals. For me personally, I really don't see much of a need for this tool, but I can see some people actually really enjoying using this tool if it works as well as Ryobi is claiming. And that's always the big guessing game here when it comes to new tools. But it should be an interesting tool, and Ryobi claims it's an industry first, and I really don't know if that's true or not, simply because I really don't know much about power carvers or carvers in general, since it's not something I do. But at the end of the day, it is an interesting tool that Ryobi is offering, and it might be a popular one at that. And next up, we have another rotary tool. Go figure. This rotary tool is going to be part of Ryobi's USB-C Lithium series, which is just a fancy way of saying a replaceable battery on a 4-volt tool. So it is an interesting tool in the fact that you can replace the 4-volt battery, which not a whole lot of 4-volt tools you can do that with. But then again, at the end of the day, that price tag is going to be a little bit offsetting, considering that if you need a rotary tool to be cordless, I think there are other options that are more affordable on the market that will probably just be as good. So moving on. And next up, we have a USB Lithium power cutter. Now this is actually a tool that I've been hoping Ryobi would release for a while, and I'm actually fairly happy with the fact they decided to go with a replaceable battery. This kind of a tool can be very useful in a variety of different situations, from working with carpet to cardboard to paper to plastic, you name it. These tools can be incredibly handy. I really hope it can live up to what Ryobi's claiming they can handle, simply because, well, I've reviewed some budget versions of these in the past and I have not been thrilled with the performance on those. So hopefully this one will be better than what I've reviewed in the past, but until I can actually get my hands on one, I'll just have to keep hoping it'll live up to my expectations. And last but not least, in the new USB Lithium series from Ryobi, it appears to be an electric screwdriver. Now, they haven't released any information on this new electric screwdriver, and it's a little bit of a guessing game for what it actually can do, but my guess is it's going to have a rotating grip. They'll be able to rotate from a pistol grip into a straight grip, onboard storage for bits, and possibly a 2-speed gearbox, although I kind of doubt it. It looks more like maybe a forward and reverse selector switch, maybe. I don't know. It's hard to tell from the pictures, but overall it does look like it's going to be a promising screwdriver, and it looks to be a little bit more on the compact side. So overall, I actually am interested to see just what this new electric screwdriver will be able to do. But until we get more information, this is the best I have. Okay, now we're returning back to the familiar territory of the 18-volt power tool. It feels nice to be back here. And first up, we have a new magnifying LED clamp light. Overall, this little clamp light looks to be fairly promising. It seems like it's fairly reasonably priced, coming in at $40, and will provide up to 500 lumens of output, as well as a 5x magnification with the magnifying glass. Overall, I have to say I am looking forward to this particular clamp light, so it should be an interesting tool once it gets released to see just how well it works. It's always a little bit of a guessing game with these particular kinds of tools, simply because a lot of it depends on how well the flexible gooseneck works, but I think Ryobi will probably do a good job, and I'm looking forward to this tool. Oh, and this promotional image is just hilarious. I really don't think you're going to be using a Ryobi product to fix something if you have those sort of scientific instruments in the background. But then again, who knows? And next up, we have another hammer drill. Now, this hammer drill looks very similar to the other current compact drill that Ryobi's offering. As a matter of fact, the only difference I can really tell is the fact that it has a hammer symbol on it. And overall, I've been fairly happy with the non-hammer drill version of this one, so it should be interesting to see just how well this one works. I will say, though, that it only has 400 inch-pounds of torque, and that might be a little bit weak for a hammer drill, but then again, it might still do a fairly decent job, so we'll just have to wait and see how well it works. And next up, we have a new reciprocating saw for pruning. Now, this is going to be a one-handed brushed, not brushless, but brushed reciprocating saw, and it will incorporate a branch hook for added control and just ease of use. Overall, I think it looks to be a decent tool. I am disappointed it doesn't have a brushless motor, and the fact that the price tag is going to be at $100 is also another downside of this particular tool. I personally would go with Ryobi's one-handed HP series brushless reciprocating saw because I own it and I actually really enjoy using it, and it's been a great reciprocating saw. And as far as I'm concerned, it's the best cordless reciprocating saw that Ryobi offers, and in my opinion, that's just the better tool. So at the end of the day, it's up to you, but for me personally, this saw just isn't going to be something I'm interested in. And next up, we have a chemical sprayer. Overall, this chemical sprayer features a fairly compact design and is definitely a minimalist approach. It has an adjustable nozzle, which they say is good for spraying, misting, and fogging, and it comes with a half-liter tank, but it is compatible with all of the quick connect features or tanks that you can find on their other chemical sprayers, as well as their ezclean lineup. So overall, I have to say I am looking forward to this particular chemical sprayer. I would prefer a lower price tag of probably around $50, but then again, who knows in today's world if this is because of inflation or just Ryobi being stupid. So moving on. Now next up, we have a new HP blower. Now, this new HP blower is going to be an interesting option for a lot of people, considering that Ryobi's 18-volt power series or blower series or whatever you want to call it just has not been all that impressive when it comes to blowers. They had a lot of different options in the 18-volt range, it's just none of them were all that great, and this one is probably going to be the best one they've ever released. So overall, I am looking forward to giving it a try. But then again, with that price tag, I might wait a little while to see if the price comes down or for some sales. So at the end of the day, it looks like it's going to be a good blower, but the price tag is going to be more expensive than what I would typically be willing to pay for a Ryobi blower. But if it does live up to its spec sheet of $130 130 miles per hour at 450 CFMs, I'm sure that's in turbo mode, it could still be worth it, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And next up we have a new hand vacuum. This is going to be replacing their current hand vacuum, and I think it's going to be a good upgrade from their current design. I am a little bit disappointed that it appears that the accessories that they picture in some of the pictures are not going to be included and they will have to be purchased separately. But then again, the price tag is fairly decent, and I already have probably the accessories that will fit it, so I don't really care all that much. So it's going to be a good little vacuum, I'm sure, but I really would have preferred maybe a little bit more effort in including accessories, or at least just a crevice tool. But then again, your crevice tools suck, Ryobi, so yeah, whatever. Moving on. And next up we have another hand vacuum, the Pbl Rt01b. Overall, this particular vacuum cleaner is supposed to have 2 times the amount of clean power compared to this particular hand vacuum. And this particular hand vacuum actually is fairly good, at least when it comes to the amount of suction it has. So I actually do have fairly high hopes for the new model. I will say I'm not a huge fan of the style they're going with. I don't really like how smooth or futuristic they're trying to make it look. I really would prefer something that looks a little bit more like it belongs in a shop or in a garage. But overall, I am glad that they decided to ditch the proprietary inlet or vacuum port and give us an adapter to be able to use accessories straight out of the box. So overall, I am looking forward to this particular vacuum cleaner, and I do have high hopes for it. And next up, we have the exact same hand vacuum I just talked about. Actually, there is some differences. One difference is the model number. This is the Pbl Rt0702, and not only can this one suck up dry debris, it can also suck up liquid messes as well. And I think that's going to be very useful for when your local grocery store is completely sold out of paper towels because everybody went into hoarding mode and bought them all. So overall, I do have really high hopes for this particular hand vacuum simply because of how unique it is. The ability to suck up liquids is definitely going to save you on those paper towels or other disposable or wasteful practices that people have, and I just really think that it's a cool and interesting idea, and one that I'm surprised we haven't seen more of. I have seen a similar vacuum to this in the past, but it wasn't very good and it didn't have very good suction, so it just kind of sucked, but not in the good way. So overall, this does look to be promising, and I am looking forward to reviewing it eventually. So moving on. And next up, we have a new stick vacuum. Ryobi has announced 3 new stick vacuums, and this appears to be the base model. This model does not appear to have any sort of brushless motor in it, and it seems to be fairly basic when it comes to a stick vacuum. I'm hoping they'll have a fairly decent price, but I'm guessing it's going to be in the $150 range. But I could be completely wrong. It could be way more expensive than that, because Ryobi seems to be playing around with the way they do their prices lately, and I haven't been too much of a fan of that. But until we know what the price is, I really can't say if this will be any good or not. But I will say that it'll probably be way better than their current stick vacuums that they offer that are for sale at Home Depot. Because, quite frankly, if you read the reviews on any of those ones all suck. And not in a good way. And next up, we have an HP series stick vacuum, the Pbl Rt0716. This appears to be the higher end stick vacuum, and it will provide some added benefits or added features, such as having a cherry hole for larger debris. It's freestanding as well. It has an intelligent brushless motor, high and low power modes. It's compatible with all of Ryobi's batteries, and cyclonic filtration. Obviously, until you actually use one, you won't really know just how much better it is than their absolute base model. I'm guessing since it has a brushless motor, it will have a better runtime, but if they decide to go with more power rather than runtime, it's hard to know. I'm not seeing anything in any of the documentation that talks about the EverCharge system, so I'm guessing that the EverCharge system has gone away or gone the way of the dodo, which is a disappointment because, quite frankly, I really enjoyed having the EverCharge system around because when you got done using the vacuum cleaner, all you had to do was hang it up and it would charge the battery. That was a super nice and convenient feature, and this just does not talk about it anywhere. So if they did do away with the EverCharge system, that would be a stupid design decision, but Ryobi's been making some of those lately, so we'll just have to wait and see. So, moving on. And next up, we have the Pbl SV717 cordless pet vac with dual beater bar or roller bar or whatever you want to call it. Now, the main difference in between this one and the previous one I just talked about would probably be that roller bar or beater bar or whatever you want to call it. This particular one not only has the one powered beater bar, but it has 2 beater bars, which could mean that you're going to be depleting that battery a little bit quicker than on the other model. It could be the secondary beater bar can be controlled via a switch or something, or it could just roll along behind that without using power, but I kind of doubt that. But until we actually get our hands on one and that can actually see how it's working, it's hard to know. Now, this does come with an additional miniature motorized beater bar, which should also be interesting, but will also pop the price up even higher. Overall, I'm beginning to get a little concerned that we might be looking at LG or Dyson prices for this particular vacuum cleaner, which I really hope is not the case. But let's get back to the vacuum cleaner. So overall, this particular vacuum cleaner looks to be as good as the previous model, but it has some added benefits and probably a much higher price tag. So at the end of the day, until we get our hands on with these new stick vacuums, it's hard to say how good they will be, but I would be willing to bet there will be drastic improvements over the current generation of stick vacuums that they offer. So let's move on. And next up we have the 40-volt ezclean. Now, when I first saw the leaked images of this particular tool, I had really high hopes that we were going to be getting something with 1,000+ psi of portable cleaning power. But unfortunately, that did not end up being the case. We're sitting at 600 psi, and that actually is the exact same psi rating that the 18-volt version of this power tool has. And so I really don't see the point in getting the 40-volt version unless all you have are 40-volt batteries. I think the 40-volt batteries will probably give you a longer runtime, but for me personally, I'm perfectly happy with the runtime I'm getting out of my 18-volt HP ezclean, so I'm not going to be upgrading to this one, at least nowhere in the near future. Maybe eventually we'll get a real power washer level ezclean, but in the meantime, I'm just going to stick with the 18-volt version. And last but not least, we have Ryobi's new 40-volt wet dry vacuum with a 10-gallon capacity. The storage tank has a drain plug at the bottom of it, as well as storage for its tools on top of the canister wheels. The tool will come with 2 extension wands, as well as a floor nozzle, a crevice tool, a filter, and the 8-foot hose with a 1.78-inch diameter. And the battery compartment on this particular vacuum cleaner has an IPX rating of 4 and is compatible with all of Ryobi's 40-volt batteries. The storage tank will also have quick release latches for quick access. So overall, I really am happy with the specs that they've decided to go with this particular vacuum cleaner. Now, if they had went with the no-tip design rather than the traditional design, that would have been fine with me too. But at the same time, I kind of do like the traditional design just a little bit better, simply because it's a very useful design and it's a little bit easier to carry around. So at the end of the day, I think the 40-volt wet dry vacuum is what I'm looking forward to the most. The stick vacs look somewhat interesting, and their new little hand vacs also look somewhat interesting. I really don't have much use for the rotary tools. I think that's something for hobbyists or people who do fine detail work more than I do, and so they don't hold much interest. And their new budget tools, well, they don't really look to be that much of an improvement over the old budget tools, so those really don't hold much interest for me either. So that's about it for this video. There's other new tools that Ryobi has announced, but I just don't really feel like talking about them because this video is already way too long. So that's it. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. God bless.